Council, please come to order. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Mandy, could you please call the roll?
Here.
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 Carlstone.
Here.
Hopkins.
Here.
Sport. Here.
So those attending via the telephone or the computer, you will be able to provide verbal comments during the dedicated public forums. I would ask that you would please leave your microphones or telephones on mute until the time which you want to speak. Before I get a motion for approval of tentative agenda, make note that agenda items E6 and E7 will be pulled from tonight's agenda and rescheduled to the October 18th council meeting. So do I have a motion for approval of the tentative agenda?
So moved.
Branderhorst Hopkins, any discussion? Okay, all in favor, please say yes. Opposed, no. Mandy, please call the roll.
Branderhorst.
Yes.
Hopkins.
Yes.
Sport.
Yes.
DeYoung.
Yes.
Danstruck.
Yes.
Carlstone.
Yes.
Motion passed. And I've got get the pleasure of administering the oath of office and introducing a new police officer in the City of Pella. So if you want to come stand right over here. Chief wanted to be a close personal witness to what's going on. So I'm going to read this, the oath of office, ask you to repeat it after me, and then this certificate is yours. Okay? So, I, Maya Erlmeyer, do solemnly swear that I will support the Constitution of the United States
I, Maya Erlmeyer, do solemnly swear that I will support the Constitution of the United States
and the Constitution of the State of Iowa,
and the Constitution of the State of Iowa,
and that I will faithfully and impartially,
and that I will faithfully and impartially,
to the best of my ability,
to the best of my ability,
discharge all the duties of the office of police officer in the City of Pella. Let's see, where do I discharge all the duties of the office of police officer in the City of Pella,
discharge all of the duties of police officer in the City of Pella,
County of Marion, State of Iowa, as now and hereafter required by law.
County for Marion, State of Iowa, and
As now and
as
hereafter.
now and hereby required by law.
Okay, welcome. You are officially welcome to the police force. Welcome.
Nice to meet you.
This is for you. Chief, you get in. Welcome once again. Thanks for your interest in
Thank
Pella.
you.
All right, moving on with our agenda. We have a public forum, opportunity for a public forum. Anyone wishing to address council regarding any agenda item, I'd ask that you please step forward to the microphone, state your name and address, and please try to limit your comments to 3 minutes. Okay, seeing none, we will move on. Can I get a motion for approval of the consent agenda?
So moved.
Sorry, there's a phone dinging. Who made the motion? Calvin? Manstra? Hopkins? Any discussion? Okay, all in favor, please say yes. Opposed, no. Mandy, please call the roll.
Danstruck.
Yes.
Hopkins.
Yes.
Sport.
Yes.
DeYoung.
Yes.
Branderhorst.
Yes.
Carlstone.
Yes.
Motion passed. Moving on, resolution number 6497, entitled Resolution Setting Dates of a Consultation and public hearing on a proposed amendment to number 1 to the Webster Park Urban Renewal Plan in the City of Pella, State of Iowa. Mike?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, I'd like to direct the council's attention to the big board for a brief presentation on this item. As Mayor DeWard stated, this resolution, what it really does is establishes the public hearing date for an amendment to the Webster Park Urban Renewal Plan. The public hearing date would be November 1st of this year. Now, a little bit of background on the Webster Park Urban Renewal Plan. The ultimate purpose of this urban renewal plan is to create redevelopment opportunities and also the light remediation and, at the time, additional housing with it. And as far as the geographical boundaries of the plan that we have up here, but basically this is the location that we have on the urban renewal plan, the old Webster School site that we have down here. Now is located on the site is the South Main Housing Development. Now the reason why we are amending the urban renewal plan is we are including the Main Street or the proposed Main Street Market Development Agreement that we'll be considering actually setting a public hearing for tonight as well. And just to avoid future amendments, what we also have is future development agreement requests not to exceed $500,000 as far as the amendment that we are considering this evening. Now, if council were to approve this resolution, we would hold a consultation with the affected taxing entities, which would be Marion County and the Pella Public Schools on October 14th of this month. And once again, the public hearing would be on November 1st of this month. So with that, Mr. Mayor, that concludes our presentation. We'd be more than happy to answer any questions the mayor and council may have on this item.
All right, thank you, Mike. Can I get a motion for approval?
Support.
Hopkins for. Any discussion? All right, all in favor, please say yes. Opposed, no. Mandy, please call the roll.
Hopkins.
Yes.
Ford.
Yes.
DeYoung.
Yes.
Vanderhorst.
Yes.
Stanström.
Yes.
Carlstone.
Yes.
Motion passed. Moving on to resolution number 6498, entitled Resolution Fixing Date for a Public Hearing on the Proposal to Enter into a Development Agreement with Pella Main Street Market LLC and providing for public notification for publication of notice thereof. Mike?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, I'd be happy to explain this item. As Mayor DeWard stated, what this resolution really does is establishes the public hearing date for consideration of the proposed development agreement for the Pella for the Main Street Market that we have. And we do have a picture of the proposed market up on the big board. It is very important to note that the development agreement that we'll be discussing on November 1st is very similar to the conditional resolution of support that council approved in 2021. Now, as far as the services that the Pella Market or the Main Street Market will be offering, they're very similar to the Gateway Market in Des Moines, and they are listed up on the big board. Mandy, let's go ahead, please. Now, as far as the development agreement, a high-level overview. There'll be considerably more details on November 1st, but as far as the developer's responsibilities is the construction of the market by December 31st of this year, and we do believe the developer is on course to meet that target date as well. Now, when we talk about construction of the market, it will be in accordance with all city standards, including the approved planned unit development ordinance, which establishes design standards for the building. The developer is also going to be required to sign a minimum tax assessment for the building of $4.4 million, and that's a fairly significant number, and we'll be explaining that later on in the presentation. Now, as far as the minimum tax assessment, it is important to note that it is an annual increase of at least 2% on an annual basis as well. In addition, the developer is going to be required to operate the market for at least 6 days a week for at least 8 hours per day on it. So let's go ahead, please, Mandy. Now, as far as the city's responsibilities are concerned, what was being proposed is the city would provide tax increment finance rebates on the property taxes received by the Pella Market. Now, when we talk about property taxes received, remember these are all taxes that are generated by the Main Street Market. If you recall, the developer will be signing a minimum tax assessment agreement of $4.4 million. And we're going to rebate approximately 75% of that back to the developer over 15 years, as long as they are in compliance with the terms of the development agreement. The remaining 25% will go to the taxing entities for the city. That would be primarily the city, the Pella Community School District in Marion County. And it's also important to note with the 25% that's being retained by the taxing entities, it's more property taxes that we're going to be receiving from the market than what was previously received with the houses that were on the site as well. So, in summary, Mr. Mayor, we are recommending approval of this resolution, which once again simply establishes November 1st of this year as the public hearing date for formal consideration of the proposed development agreement.
Okay, thank you, Mike. Can I get a motion for approval?
So moved.
Support.
Manstra, Oh, you two tied, Hopkins. Any discussion? Okay, all in favor, please say yes. Opposed, no. Mandy, please call the roll.
Leandra.
Yes.
Hopkins.
Yes.
Ford.
Yes.
DeYoung.
Yes.
Reindeerhorst.
Yes.
Charleston.
Yes.
Motion passed. Moving on, resolution number 6499 entitled Resolution Determining the Necessity and Setting Dates of a Consultation and a Public Hearing on a Proposed Timber View Urban Renewal Plan for Proposed Urban Renewal Area in the City of Pella, State of Iowa. Mike?
Yes, Mr. Mayor. Once again, I'd like to direct everyone's attention to the big board for a presentation on this item. As Mayor Ward stated, what we're really doing with this is we're establishing November 15th as the public hearing date for proposed urban renewal plan. This urban renewal plan will be identified as the Housing Development Timber View. Now, the primary purpose of this urban renewal plan is to provide additional housing for the City of Pella. Now, as far as the geographical areas, you can see this development is just north of Hazel Street right here. And we've also included the public right-of-way on East Park Lane. Currently, this section of East Park Lane is currently a gravel road, but generally speaking, the urban renewal plan corresponds to phase 1 of the development agreement, or the Timberview housing development as well. Now, as far as some of the items that we are including within the development agreement on this as well, would be the proposed extension of Hazel Street that would extend north into the development. We've also included the cost potentially someday of upgrading East Park Lane as far as the urban renewal plan as well. In addition, we have the Timberview development agreement that will be covered in a future presentation on this agenda as well. In addition, to avoid unnecessary amendments in the future, we have future development agreements for this area set at not to exceed $500,000 as well. And of course, we always need to include the engineering and attorney fees as well, and that's a not to exceed $20,000. So Mandy, let's go ahead, please. Now, if council were to approve this resolution this evening, what would happen or would occur is on October 20th, we would hold a consultation with the affected taxing entities, and that would be Marion County and the Pella Community School District. On November 15th would be the public hearing date for formal consideration of this proposed urban renewal plan. Now, with that, Mr. Mayor, I'd be more than happy to answer any questions the Mayor and Council may have on this item.
All right, thank you, Mike. Can I get a motion for approval?
Support.
Hopkins for discussion. Okay, all in favor, please say yes. Opposed, no. Mandy, please call the roll.
Hopkins.
Yes.
Ford.
Yes.
DeYoung.
Yes.
Reindeerhorst.
Yes.
Leandra.
Yes.
Charleston.
Yes.
Motion passed. Moving on, resolution number 6500 entitled A Resolution in Support of Proposed Terms to be Included in Agreement for Private Development by and between the City of Pella and Pella Timber View LLC. Mike?
Yes, Mr. Mayor. Once again, I'd like to direct everyone's attention to the big board for a brief presentation on this item. And as Mayor Ward stated, what we're considering this evening with this resolution is a conditional resolution of support. Now, I want to state up front with this conditional resolution of support, it is a non-binding agreement. However, it does signify, or it's meant to express the city's intentions on a future development agreement for the Timberview housing subdivision. It's very important to note that the resolution that we are considering this evening is very similar to the proposed development terms that we can discuss on July 19th of this year. Now, as far as the area that is concerned with the Timberview development, it is generally this purple area that we have up here in the B4. This is the entire development. The resolution support would be phase 1, and we'll be showing that later on in the presentation on phase 1. But generally, when we talk about phase 1, we're talking about approximately 36 homes, 24 single-family homes, and 12 single-family attached homes as well. Now, ultimately, the developer estimates a build-out, at full build-out, would be nearly $16.1 million in housing valuations for the City of Pella. So let's go ahead, please, Mandy. Now, as far as some of the big items that we have, including in the conditional resolution of support, would be a partial reimbursement to the developer for the installation of public infrastructure. When we talk about public infrastructure, this would be the public infrastructure for extending Hazel Street and the associated public utilities that are involved with the extension of Hazel Street. The cost of that is $2.5 million. The developer is requesting a reimbursement up to the lesser of 70% of the actual cost of the public infrastructure, or $1,750,000. Now, in addition, this is probably the one change that I would say that has been since July 19th. On July 19th, we talked about the minimum tax assessment on that, and at the time we had mentioned to the council the developer was willing to sign a $450,000 minimum tax assessment per single-family home. Since then, we've negotiated a $400,000 amount for single-family homes, and I think from the developer's standpoint, there were some concerns about a higher assessment. The city does not consider that to be a material adjustment from our standpoint on this as well. So that would be the one change that we did from what we discussed on July 19th of this year. In addition, it is also important to note that the developer will dedicate a future lot to be used as a city park with phase 1 on their final plat for phase 1. So let's go ahead, please, Mandy. Well, what we have listed up here is just a summary of the low and moderate income requirements in TIF law and under Iowa law. It is important to note just on a couple of these items, we will be making a request to both Marion County and the Pella City School District this month to allow a 5-year extension for the development as well. So far to date, both the county and the school district have been very accommodating on TIF extensions for housing in there. So that will be made to the Pella Community School District this month. It is important to note that when we talk about TIF revenues for under Iowa law, they can only be used to offset public infrastructure costs for housing developments. In addition, it is one of the key benefits to this housing development when you talk about it from the city standpoint is that the city has to use a percentage of our TIF revenues to support low and moderate income housing within our community. Now that is defined as incomes of no greater than 80% of the median income in the county. So when we look at Marion County, approximately 37% of our population falls in that category of LMI. What that means is of the TIF award, which in this case is $1,750,000 that we're using, we have to dedicate 37% of that award to benefit low and moderate income families in the city of Pella. So over the course of the proposed TIF district, which would be 15 years, we believe that would generate funds to support low and moderate income families in the tune of just over $643,000. The last bullet point we have listed up on the big board is some of the items that could be used for potential LMI program for the city of Pella. So let's go ahead, please, Mandy. Now, as far as some of the details in the letter of intent, and once again, this is all conditioned on the developer meeting all city requirements and installing the public infrastructure according to both city and SUDA standards, that is the standards that governs the installation of public infrastructure. But what would happen as soon as Hazel Street is built for phase 1 and dedicated to the city of Pella, the city would give a benchmark grant of $500,000 to the developer. Now, as far as TIF rebates would be concerned, we would be, at the TIF rebates, would be given in addition to the benchmark grant. So the TIF rebates in this case would be approximately $1.2 million. So when you add in the $500,000 plus the TIF rebates, that's how we get up to the $1,750,000 for the total reimbursement to the developer. When we look at that total reimbursement of $1,750,000 to the developer, it's very similar to other developments that we've done inside the city of Pella. When you look at the reimbursement to the infrastructure cost, it's very similar to Boss Ridge and also Boss London Estates. So it's a very similar approach that the city of Pella has taken that we've done for other developments as well. It is important to note when we talk about TIF rebates on this as well, we're talking about taxes, new taxes that would be built and generated off from new houses inside the housing development. So we would not be using existing property taxes to rebate the developer. The $500,000 benchmark grant, in this case, under the terms of the development agreement, that would be paid back to the city first. So it would be the first dollars generated by the development on a TIF basis to pay the city back. We believe that would take approximately 7 to 8 years based on our calculations. So let's go ahead, please, Mandy. Now, what we have listed up on the big board is a map of the development, and as you can see, we have indicated phase 1 of the development. That's where the 36 homes would be built. That is the proposed development agreement that we would have with the developer. And as you can see, Hazel Street would be extended north. The cost to extend Hazel Street is right around $2.5 million. So once again, in summary, I want to emphasize to council that this resolution does not create a binding agreement. It simply signifies the council's intent on terms that could be included in a potential development agreement to the developer on this. And it often serves as it encourages the developer to proceed with the development on that as well. So With that, Mr. Mayor, I believe that concludes our presentation. I'd be more than happy to answer any questions the mayor or council may have on this item.
All right, thank you, Mike. Can I get a motion for approval?
So moved.
DeYoung, Spore, discussion, questions?
Mandy, could you go back to either the first or second slide? I think it was on the first one. On the 36 lots, 24 attached and 12 detached, wasn't that almost flip-flopped? Was that similar to our July proposal, or that seems to me maybe it was another change versus the minimum assessment?
Yeah, thank you for bringing that to my attention. You are correct. I think in July presentation, we had 10 single-family attached homes. Now it's 12. And then at the time, we had 27 single-family homes. We were including in the single-family homes in July the park ground that would be dedicated to the City of Pella. So instead of 37 housing units, there'll be 36. Plus, we get a park area dedicated for a city park on it. So that's the difference between July. So that it was 2 more attached units and 1 less single-family unit is the only difference.
Okay, anything else? All right, we will vote on the motion for approval of the resolution. All in favor, please say yes. Opposed, no. Mandy, please call the roll.
DeYoung.
Yes.
Spore.
Yes.
Reindeerhorst.
Yes.
Stanser.
Yes.
Carlstone.
Yes.
Hopkins.
Yes.
Motion passed. Moving on to resolution number 6501, entitled Resolution Fixing Date for a Public Hearing on the Proposal to Enter into a Development Agreement with Pella Timberview LLC and providing for publication of notice thereof. Mike?
Yes, Mr. Mayor. As Mayor DeWard stated, what this resolution really does is establishes November 15th as the public hearing date for formal consideration of a development agreement with Pella Timberview LLC. The previous presentation on the conditional resolution of support is going to mirror the terms that we'll be discussing on November 15th. And so what we're simply doing is asking permission to set November 15th as the public hearing date for formal consideration of this proposed development.
Okay, thank you, Mike. Can I get a motion for approval?
So moved.
Brandenhorst, Hopkins, any discussion?
My only concern, and this isn't really the time to really bring it up, is just that traffic flow. I know we've talked about that before, but I was on Hazel Street again this past weekend, and it's pretty narrow, the sidewalks. So I just, as construction equipment starts coming in, as there's more people. So I think figuring out that traffic flow and additional outlets sooner the better.
Okay, anything else? All right. We'll vote on the motion for approval of the resolution. All in favor, please say yes. Opposed, no. Mandy, please call the roll.
Reindeerhorst.
Yes.
Hopkins.
Yes.
Spore.
Yes.
DeYoung.
Yes.
Stanser.
Yes.
Carlstone.
Yes.
Motion passed. Abstract of bills number 2112. Do I get a motion for approval?
Move to approve and issue warrants.
Brandenhorst,
Support.
DeYoung, any questions on the bills or discussion?
Looks like we got some street work done.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it looks like university is all paved now. A little work to do around the edges, but it's paved. All right, so all in favor, please say yes. Opposed, no. Mandy, please call the roll.
Reindeerhorst.
Yes.
DeYoung.
Yes.
Stanser.
Yes.
Carlstone.
Yes.
Hopkins.
Yes.
Spore.
Yes.
Motion passed. Any council member have any other business you want council to address this evening?
I was just going to make a comment. I went to the Iowa League of Cities convention, and I would just encourage, is held in Waterloo. I encourage all council members, if you get a chance to do it. I think Mark's been to that in the past, years ago. Yeah, lots of good seminars and speakers, and just 2 things. I ran into Mike's old boss from West Des Moines. Tried to get some stories from him, but had no luck, so I lost out there. And then they do a awards for cities that have done big projects, and they do it on base of the size of the cities. And the city of Northwood, which is north of Mason City, less than 3,000 people, did the town worked on a big event center for wedding receptions and for gatherings of all kinds. Washington did a ballpark complex that they did. Fort Madison, the Santa Fe Railroad, they did the historic depot. They upgraded that, so now that Amtrak can actually stop there. And then West Des Moines did the infamous Rexplex, I think is what they call it, that big indoor rec center. So it just struck me that of the four, three of them had to do with amenities and things to go out in free time. So as we go forward with some of our other discussions, I think that's interesting to know.
I would like to put chat Beggars Night. So I received some feedback about it being on a Monday night this year, which is October 31, so that makes sense. However, did receive some feedback that it's a little bit difficult for parents on a Monday night with school, with starting off the week, etc. So I know a lot of work goes into planning the night, like figuring out what works in the schedule between football games and events and other communities and things like that. I chatted with Marcia, and she does so much work to do that, but wondering if it makes sense that we almost formalize, just as it always held, on the last Saturday of October, or curious on the thoughts of council.
Does that mean you agree with us? Last Saturday night?
Yeah.
That works for me.
I think that would be a good idea.
Have we already approved the night?
Yeah.
Yes, we have. Now, putting Chief on the spot. Chief, would there be any issues coming back on October 18th and resetting or reconsidering that and establishing it for the last Saturday of this October?
No, sir, not from the PD perspective. I don't know if any other department has had any, thoughts on it.
There is a special event permit also that's already been approved for trunk or treat. So I talked to the Pella ambulance is kind of spearheading that too. So that would be another agenda item we need to change for this year as well.
Last year we did the first trunk or treat, and we partnered with PD and FD, and it was a huge success. We had kids lined up almost all the way down to the Mexican restaurant to come through it. So it was a huge thing. I don't think there'd be any issue for us to move it. It'd just be up to you guys to approve it.
Yeah.
I mean, I have to buy candy for whatever last Saturday and whatever's the 31st. Kids out for both nights.
Well, maybe this year might be a little.
They're out by the thousands.
Yeah. Just turn your lights out.
Yeah. And I don't know if if we can make that kind of the standing moving forward, that it's easier from a scheduling perspective for the community. And I don't know if we need to vote, if that needs to be a resolution moving forward, or I'll leave that up to you guys, but something to consider.
Okay, any other comments? So should we have them bring a change in the date to our 18th meeting? Is that kind of the consensus?
Is it too late?
That's my question.
Mandy?
We've communicated it quite a bit via social media, but that's just re-communicating it. I don't think that would be too difficult.
Can you act on it now?
We'd have to have a resolution. So nothing's that easy.
Yeah.
Nothing's that easy by a government entity. Okay, so if anybody has anything they want to talk to.
And maybe get some feedback too over the next 2 weeks.
Yeah.
If moving it is going to be too much of a hassle, then we can always vote to not do it this year, but moving forward. Yeah, so either way, but I think if we could bring it next. Yeah, and then, get some feedback. That's great.
Okay, anything else, council? All right, any member of the public have any other business that you would like to address the council with? If you do, please step forward, state your name and address. Try to limit your comments to 3 minutes. All right, seeing none, we will adjourn to our policy and planning sessions. We have 3 items for discussion. I know several of you are here to hear our discussion on the first one, so we'll start with the community center discussion. Mike?
I guess, Mr. Mayor, I'd be happy to review this item at the City Council. And ultimately, as Mayor DeWard stated, we're talking about proposed improvements to the Pella Community Center. And ultimately, at the end of this meeting, we're looking for direction from the City Council. And what is being proposed is to proceed with the engineering phase of the proposed improvements to the community center facility. A little bit of background on the scope of the project. What's being proposed is the most recent engineering assessment was conducted in 2020. That particular assessment identified roughly $5.5 million in needed improvements to extend the life of the facility for another 20 years. And when we talk about $5.5 million, it was the electrical, mechanical systems, plumbing systems that were mainly the lion's share of that $5.5 million. So let's go ahead, please, Mandy. Now, as far as the community center is concerned, it is included in the city's facility plans. A brief high-level overview of the city's facility plan as it currently stands. When we look at the plan in total, it's roughly a $45 million plan. And what we've allocated is approximately $31 million for the proposed indoor rec center. We also have the University Street extension included in the plan, as well as the community center improvements as well. And we do have about a 5% contingency included in our plan of $45 million. So we have $45 million of proposed expenditures. The easiest way to look at the funding sources for the plan is the City of Pella is proposing to fund approximately half of the proposed $45 million plan. The other half would be raised by other entities outside of the City of Pella, and today we've raised over $12 million in financial contributions for this plan. So let's go ahead, please, Mandy. Now, as part of the plan that we have this evening in renovating the community center, one of the items that we would like to propose if we do proceed with engineering for the facility is to develop a future use plan for the community center, and that would be to identify city and community uses of the facility. Now, the reason why we're saying the future use facility as a part of the future use plan for the facility is when we look at our proposed improvements just with the indoor rec center, we have heard some discussion from the staff level as far as future uses for the gym. We've heard some discussions about other uses other than a gym, for instance, a makerspace as space dedicated in the community center. There's been other uses for that. We're not proposing anything different, but we think it'd be appropriate and wise to establish a use plan, particularly how the community center fits into the city's long-range plans. In addition, when we talk about a use plan, there are some other facilities outside of the Community Services Department that do use the community center for their own use, such as the Pella Public Library. And there has been discussion about using the community center to support the Pella Public Library. This would be, for instance, if we established a high-tech room within the community center, maybe we might be able to move the public computer usage that currently takes place at the Pella Public Library over to the community center. This would free up floor space for the library and allow us to expand operations at the library as well. And I believe we've covered these items, but with the future use plan, we believe that that could be included in the scope of services for our engineer for the project, architect engineer. And as a part of the plan, they could also conduct public input sessions on it as well. Let's go ahead, please, Mandy. Now, another discussion item that we'd like to have with council on this is potentially establishing an ad hoc committee to help the city with the potential with the renovation of the community center. And what we would suggest from the city staff level is the committee would consist of 5 members or less, and there would include city representatives and community center user group representatives. Now, I'm just going to pick out just a high-level overview, but these are for discussion purposes only, and this is up to the city council if we even establish an ad hoc committee. But the ultimate decision is who has representation on that committee is up to the city council. But we would recommend a representative from the city council, a representative from our community services board. We'd also recommend a representative from the library board of trustees as well. Now, the last 2 groups that we have out there is the Friends of the Community Center. We think it's very important to stay in contact with the Friends on any type of renovation to the community center. It's our understanding from the staff level that they do plan on trying to raise additional funds to provide additional enhancements for the facility as well. So we think it's wise to have them included in this process. And Union Street Players has been a heavy user of the community center. We'd want to make sure that we included their input throughout the process as well. So Mandy, let's go ahead, please. Now, this is a very tentative timeline that we have listed up here. It is not finalized, and I want to say it is subject to change on it as well. So if we get authorization tonight, what we would do is we'd start the engineering selection process. And we believe we'd have an RFP, we send it out to proposed potential engineering firms or engineering firms we would advertise for bids, and we'd also send it directly to some of the engineering firms that we know that specialize and renovations on this as well. That process would likely take place through the end of this year. Now, as far as the facility use plan, we propose that that be completed by the City Council and approved by the City Council by May of this year. October of next year, so that's approximately 1 year from now, we'd be looking at having all financial contributions to the project finalized. And the reason why we want to have that finalized is we want to know the scope of the project that we can afford to build it and for the renovation. And that would correspond nicely with having the engineering for the project done by December of 2024. And the typical plan would be, actually that should be 2023, excuse me for that mistake. Under the course of that, if we had engineering completed by next December, so that'd be December of 2023, we could approve a contractor for the bid for the project for March of 2024, potentially begin the renovations by the summer of 2024, and the goal would be to have them completed by the fall of 2025. And so with that, Mr. Mayor, I believe that concludes the staff presentation, and ultimately we're looking for direction from the City Council on this project, specifically on proceeding with the engineering phase for the project.
Okay. Comments, questions, council? Direction.
Exciting, let's get that engineer going. Very exciting, finally.
A whole bunch of, what we call engineering, architectural work has already been done. Where would that factor into this? We don't want to reinvent the wheel.
And we won't. With engineering phase, the engineer that we would hire, I would think it would lessen the city's cost on it just because of all the studies that have been done to date on it as well. But you would still need, because this is a public improvement under Iowa law, you'll still need an architect and engineer on the project, and we'd want to make sure we had one on a building renovation at the size and scale of this as well. So to answer your question, Councilmember Dion, I believe it should lessen the city's engineering costs simply because of the amount of work that we have done throughout the years on it. So hopefully it'll be a benefit.
And when you mentioned the Friends of the Community Center, the enhancements that they want to do, or would consider, wouldn't those have to be figured out before the engineering starts? Or not necessarily?
No, not from my perspective, not necessarily. I think we'd have some time from them, because what would simply be done is in conversations with the friends from the staff standpoint on it, we'd have an idea what type of enhancements they were looking to do, what they think they can fundraise for. Those types of items would likely be included in what we would call an alternate phase bid for the project. So what the city would likely have on this project is we'd have the renovation cost of the $5.5 million to the contractors. We would tell them we're doing this no matter what. Give us a bid for this. And then also give us an alternate bid for these enhancements. And that would be entirely dependent on the amount of outside funds that we would raise for the project. So we wouldn't necessarily have to have it done by the time we started engineering. We'd have to have an idea before they finalized the plans, because we simply would be trying to do them as an alternate bid.
So that would maybe be around December 23, then before it goes out for approving the contractor.
Well, yeah, we're looking at having the engineering finalized, and what would actually happen, this is probably a critical date, what we're using. That's probably going to have the biggest impact on the engineering. What are the plans? What is the future use of the facility? Once we have that done, and hopefully that jives with what the Friends tells us they can raise money for on the project, but along the way, what we're hoping to do is be in communication with the Friends, have an idea what they can actually raise money for, and that's going to be the biggest determination on whether we have enhancements above and beyond the city's $5.5 million commitment to the building.
Okay, we've been talking about it for a minute. Let's see what we come up with.
Yeah, I think we definitely, just so we know in our previous discussions, number one, through our facility discussion, we basically said we were committing to this facility to get it back to minimum working condition. And we've also talked about it being a minimum. Our minimum investment is the $5.5 million. So again, depending on other funding standpoint, hopefully we'll be able to enhance it significantly from there. But I think we need to get the engineering going.
And input from the various.
Yeah, I liked your list of a potential group. I think we should do that. I think we should have a group that would work with the architects and engineers, much like we're doing with the rec center. I think that input is pretty valuable. And so that list of potential members of a group, I think, would be serve that well.
Can I volunteer?
You can. And be the council rep.
Yep.
Okay.
Motion to approve.
Well, tonight we're not approving anything. We're giving direction to get the engineering selection process going and get the process started. So I think there's clear direction from council to staff to.
Mike, you had asked a specific question about the gym, I think, in one of your earlier. What is the question whether the gym should remain or be converted into something else? Was that, because I think that was what you wanted direction from council, or will that be more on that committee level?
I think it's going to be on the committee level, and I also think that we want to have the answer to that by May of next year when the facility use plan is formally approved by the city council on it. We just think it's important as we're going through this process to have a discussion on what the uses are in the building and have something formally approved by the city council. I use the gym as one example.
Oh, okay.
So sometimes this is dangerous, but I know several of you are here with a lot of interest in this particular project. So I want to make sure and give you an opportunity. You didn't say anything pre-meeting, before the agenda, but like I say, I know a lot of you invested a lot of time and probably some money into this facility. So if there's any questions or comments any of you would like to make about this, I think Rhonda had her hand up first. So
I just wanted to ask that if, in addition to the people on the committee, if someone from the Historic Preservation Commission could be on the committee.
Yeah.
As
Good.
it's a historic building.
Yep.
And also a request that the engineering selection is narrowed down a little bit to someone who actually works with historic buildings. I know that architects for historic buildings have a smaller niche than just general architects. They're sort of specialists in that. So
would the people that have already done some of the engineering and qualify?
yes.
They would fit your description?
Yes, the group that the Friends hired specializes in historic buildings, and there are other groups as well.
Okay.
And the Schimmer group that we hired worked with Hoyt Sherman Place on the restoration and their improvement on that one, and among other things. And I also wanted to say that the only reason we've been waiting to raise money is because we can't raise money, we can't go for grants until the city has committed to the building. So any commitment you make will be able to start our improvement. And we have also, I know we had that big addition, and we know that might be not doable, but we're more than flexible. We still want to focus on having the Broadway entrance and access to all 4 floors. And our Schimmer group is interested in doing this project, so they will be putting in their bid.
Okay.
And then to Cal's comment, the Friends anticipate Mike's suggestion, alternate proposals. What would it cost to add that elevator to the west side? What would it cost to reconfigure that first floor so that we can set stretch goals, if you will, for fundraising? We know we're going this far. If we can raise money to here, we can add this. We can raise money here, we can add that. So to try to give meaning to what people are donating and to give us a plan to move forward, to get the expansions, to get the improvements that we think could help the building.
So Patty, you mentioned the word commitment, before you can start running the commitment from the city. what, for, I assume, I mean, that
But you're gonna do the
5.5.
building.
Yeah, but what,
If you're gonna do a buck to do the building, as long as you can do that.
But what is it? I mean, was that a formal resolution on our part, or Mike, you can maybe help too? What gives you the hard standing that you can go to your grant resources that say, yes, this see here, this is what the city will do?
Well, when you're moving forward, Mayor and Mike and you guys already, just by putting the $5.5 million up
Right.
and voting that you're gonna go with this building, you're not gonna tear it down, you're not gonna move on to something else, that's what we've been waiting for, everybody's been waiting for. So-
And I think when you're writing grants, particularly if you're doing a matching grant, you'll need a letter from the city with a firm verbiage on that, saying the city has dedicated this amount of money. And as soon as you have that, it's gonna help you a
With the
lot.
grants and stuff, we've got people
Yeah.
saying they'll help and work with us, so. I also wanna say on the Heritage Gym, our thoughts going forward, it's nearly 7,000 square feet. Okay? Because it's the only room in the, I know, well, we have to make these considerations. And we had our architect look at what it would cost to turn it into a 2-floor building, space. That just minimum would be, close to $7 million. Just to make it 2 floors, that's not anything else but just the flooring in. And, I thought about this, it's the only room in the building that is still original. And there was no plans to actually get the ceiling going. We're looking at redoing the locker rooms, and opening up some of the windows and stuff, but not really changing it that much. So there wouldn't be a lot of renovation involved with that, except for the locker room. And thank you guys all. This is amazing.
Well, I think it's hopefully the message you're getting tonight from the council is that we are committed to, at minimum, spending the $5.5 million to bring the building back to life the way it should be. So hopefully that's enough. That's the commitment you're looking for, and obviously we'll have to do official approvals of things along the way. And
oh yeah, we know
who knows?
This is the beginning of the process,
Yeah.
but this would be a huge step forward.
I think I saw another hand up over there. I don't know.
She answered mine.
Okay.
I guess.
Yeah.
I would just throw out a suggestion for another member of the committee, possibly a member of the homeschoolers, because they use that facility a lot, so just a suggestion.
Would you all do this for me? If you're interested in serving on the, could you send me an email? Just send me an email if you're interested in suggested names of people that maybe, I don't want to get a 15-member committee because then nothing gets done. So we got to try to limit it. But if you are interested or you know somebody, that would be good. I think it's working very well on the rec center with the group we have working with our architects. So I think we can do that here too with a group of interested users. So yes, if you want to do that, send me names, and we'll formally approve a group here, maybe by next meeting or in the near future.
I do have one more thing. I just kind of feel bad for our kids right now not having a community gym in our city. Is there any way that gym can be brought up to snuff, that kids could have the opportunity to go back there again until we get something more definite?
I don't know the answer to that. I know that at one point, I think there's been estimated cost to get it so it could reopen, but I don't know where those are at. And they probably are significantly changed by now. I don't know. I guess my thought would be you wouldn't want to. Well, maybe you would want to spend money for a temporary basis.
Temporary would be just repairing the ceiling, which would.
My understanding is it needs abatement though.
Yeah.
So it's
Well, that's
not
it.
just as simple as getting it down and safe for the kids and not have it fall on them. You gotta do, I don't know if there's a time requirement after it's done, or I don't know, all the, it's a pretty fancy dance, so.
Well, we've gotten an estimate from one company about the abatement, asbestos abatement. I was surprised, not that it's cheap, but that it wasn't as expensive as I thought. So, I don't know. We have like 120,000 to get it fixed, 130,000 to get it open and running again. And you're gonna have to do that anyway, no matter what you do with the gym.
What I'd be worried about is having to redo it too, get the equipment in there to do whatever they have to do, and you're just doing it again in, a year, and things are so expensive right now anyway. I'd rather do it once and done than, as much as we love the gym as well, doing it twice is more than twice as expensive.
I think that your ad hoc committee, one of the first agenda items might be taking a look at whether the gym should stay a gym or be something else, because if the committee says, we want to keep a heritage gym, then a lot of that would not be redone. But yes, you can't make that decision until you decide what you're going to do with it.
Okay.
My concern right now is just the kids in our community. I just feel they're being kind of slighted because we don't have someplace. Years ago, we used to have a contract with public schools where they would actually get together with the city, and then they would lease their gyms out on Saturdays and things for open gym. I just would like to have something for our kids to get back into rec. And I think we just need to look at that carefully. It's a big push right now, the social, emotional health and things. I think we're looking into it again.
And I've got homeschoolers, mothers, baking.
Okay, I told you it's dangerous to do this. Okay. It was good, all good comments, so thank you. And again, if you're interested in being part of this planning group, let me know, and then we'll make it formal. So thank you. Okay, we'll move on to a discussion about our new Pella ambulance service, or not new service, new to the city.
All right, Mr. Mayor, and as Mayor DeWard stated, we have an update tonight on the Pella ambulance on this. We also have a few directional questions that we're going to be inquiring on the City Council as well. And as Mayor DeWard stated, as of July 1st this year, Pella Ambulance became a city department and is still providing excellent service to our community, and that's the important thing. From city administration standpoint, we'd like to thank the ambulance for the willingness to go through the transition and their efforts they've made to make this a smooth transition over to the City of Pella. So from our standpoint, I think as far as the expectations on the transition, it's went fairly smooth up to date, but it has been some differences on it, but we've been able to overcome it. And once again, from the city staff standpoint, the important thing is we're providing great service and continue to provide great service on this essential service to the City of Pella. Now, the items that we wanted to talk about this evening, just to make sure everybody's on the same page, is we are in the process of this, up to this date, we've been transitioning the Pella ambulance over to the City of Pella. We've also had to get authorization to begin billing patients for services. So literally since July of this year, we have not been billing people because we had to get authorization through Medicare, Medicaid, and also Blue Cross Blue Shield on this. We want to make sure, as it applies to Wellmark, Blue Cross, Blue Shield, and private insurance, that council is aware of what the action plan is on this as well. And what we're planning on doing is we're planning on being an in-network provider. It's a little different than the staff memo, and as you can see, some things we're still tweaking, but we're planning on becoming an in-network provider for Blue Cross Blue Shield. Now, by being an in-network provider, the advantage that gives to us is when people utilize our service, the insurance company pays us directly for their portion, the insurance portion of the bill. We do have the ability to bill patients directly for the portion that's not covered by insurance, but by being an in-network provider, what we're choosing to do by being an in-network provider, we're limited to the amount that we can bill those folks up to their policy deductible on it as well. So it depends on our charges, on how much private billing that there will be in the matter, and it's a little different than what Pella City Ambulance has done in the past. It's my understanding the rates for the ambulance were essentially the rates that were approved by Blue Cross Blue Shield, They submitted a bill to Blue Cross Blue Shield, got paid by the insurance company. There's no private billing outside of that. From our standpoint, when we looked over and we brought them over to the City of Pella, if you recall, with our financial discussions, we had a subsidy for the Pella Community Ambulance of $300,000. In order to hit that $300,000, we needed to increase the rates. So what we're planning on doing, we have listed up our approved rates and what Wellmark is over here. And as you can see, ours are higher than what Wellmark has. And what we're planning on doing is being a network provider. We'll get the insurance payment. We think it's important this first year to see how it goes in the transition. So Wellmark will pay us the insurance payment. Anything above that, we will be billing people in addition to that, but we will be limited by the amount of deductible they have left on their insurance policy on it. So just for this first year, we would choose to be an in-network provider, but we still plan on billing people above and beyond the insurance bill on it. As you can see, most of our charges are above the Wellmark insurance. And we thought it was important, A, to have that communication to City Council tonight before we start doing it. And if you were to get calls, you would at least understand why we're choosing to do that. But with that, before we move on off the private billing side of things, we'd be happy to answer any questions the council may have on the insurance and the billing procedures that we're going to be undertaking.
So that last bullet point, patients will be billed for additional charges up to their deductible limits. Once a resident has reached their deductible, no bill goes out.
Yeah.
And then does Wellmark have all those metrics and details that we know when not to bill?
Well, it's my understanding, that's why we have the experts in the back of the room on it. And this is something that's never been done before at the ambulance. But it's my understanding when a patient comes through and we have their insurance card, we know how much their deductible is on their plan, how much they've used. And so we'll know what the private billing is. And what the plan of action is we're going to submit a bill to the insurance company, and we're also going to submit a bill to the patient for the remaining deductible that they have, whatever our charges would be up to that amount. So it'll differ from folks depending on the cost of their service and how much they have left on their deductible. But the plan is to do that right away.
I guess, so being an in-network provider, that's with Wellmark.
Yes.
What about other insurances?
They're the only ones that were have an in-network process, if I'm correct. So.
All the other ones are out-of-network.
So we will know all that on a Wellmark patient, but not a whatever other insurance.
Yeah, because you're still going to be able to bill the same amount to the other insurance companies. It's just the Wellmark, we're going to only accept what they reimburse after they reach their deductible.
Is this the number you're going to bill Medicare?
No. Medicare and Chief, I think we don't have the Medicare rates up there, but correct me if I'm wrong, the cap is about, what is the Medicare amount? Is it I want to say $350 or so?
Yeah.
350 for Medicare is the max for Medicare. 150 is Medicaid. On
Per run, or is it divided up like this as well?
It's divided up like this. The biggest difference between Medicare and Medicaid and Wellmark and the other insurance is Medicare and Medicaid are law. We can't bill them anything more than what they're going to reimburse. We have to accept what they have. So, which is why we were in the position we were in, because our Medicare and Medicaid numbers have gotten out of whack. So.
Yeah,
And that's the majority of the calls too. Is that correct?
Yes. When I first got here 4.5 years ago, 38% of what we did was Medicare and 8% was Medicaid. This last year, it was 11% was Medicaid and 52% was Medicare. So that's a huge swing. We're talking hundreds of thousands of dollars going the opposite direction.
Yeah. Keep that point in mind when we talk about Medicare and Medicaid and serving outside the corporate limits as well, because that's a key point to keep in mind.
Is there a dry run false alarm charge?
We get zero. What we do have, there's only one thing that we do charge for, and that is lift assist. We give a free bill. We get a free lift, and then after the first lift, they get. And we've had some people that it's 8, 9 lifts in a month that we're at their house, just pick them up, put them in their recliner. So we get $100 a time for that, but we can't bill Medicaid patients.
bill Medicare for that?
We can bill Medicare, just not Medicaid.
You can't just not even bill Medicare, could you just ask for a cash payment?
We do, for our patients for lift assist, we do cash.
If they're on Medicare though, can you not bill them and just?
We're not considered paramedicine yet, so we can't do that. Eventually, paramedicine will work its way into our area, and we will be able to qualify for that when we don't right now. That will be something that GMT monies do. This last year, they are keeping track of the dry runs, and they do reimburse a certain portion for the dry runs in this upcoming year for the GMTs.
How about transfers? I know we sometimes pick up from other towns, or I think we're going to get to, that are outside our service area, if I remember, namely west of us, but also from Pella Ridge to Mercy, etc.
From Pella Regional?
Yeah.
Those are guaranteed.
By the insurers, but how about a service charge for providing the service to the hospital?
That is a possibility. I mean, there are communities out there, I think, I've heard, I don't know for sure, but I think Newton Fire Department receives, I believe, $10,000 a year from SCIF to provide their service. That's something that we could look into.
I think we ought to look at
later
ways to
date.
fill that $300,000 gap. Maybe that could be one of them.
The problem with that is that you have to have an ambulance for them when they want it, and sometimes you leave your community.
Yeah, especially if you're in a certain lump sum.
So that's, and Pella Regional is a very busy hospital, you know this. So, like last night, we had 2 transfers out, and we were our 3rd ambulance that was covering at 2 in the morning. So, so if they have a 3rd, then what are we going to do? So that's one of those things that it stretches us thin. That's why I've never entered into a contract with the hospital, because I can tell them no. Make sure that the community is covered. So.
And to be sure, this doesn't happen like somebody's found down, call the ambulance pats them down for their wallet to get their insurance card.
We get the insurance.
Provide the service, this is all done after that.
Yep.
Just for public record.
Okay, do we have more to talk about? Yeah, we sure do, Mayor. There's 2 other items. Now, we also wanted to make sure, and I want to preface, this is new to us. It's new for the ambulance, and this is the first year that we would be doing it. But for patients that owe the City of Pella funds for ambulance services that have not paid, what we're planning on doing is enrolling in the income offset program. And this would be for non-Medicare or Medicaid patients. And basically for those individuals that would still owe funds to the City of Pella after we've exhausted our collection procedures, we'd enter into this program and we'd have to make a good faith effort to collect the debt. If it's not received, what the state has the ability to do is withhold their income tax returns until the funds are paid to the City of Pella. So it's a good debt collection method. We're planning on doing it, but it's new for us. We've never done this before. But we just thought with the new service being involved, additional billing on this, that it's very important that the city collects as much as it can in order to continue to provide a high-quality service on it as well. And we wanted to make sure council was aware of that we're planning on enrolling in this program and using this as an additional debt collection method for the City of Pella.
So I think we talked about this before, but that's a significant problem, right? Trying to collect.
It is. Yep, and it was, to be honest with you, Knoxville didn't do it for a long time when I was there. My last 3 years, they started doing it. That very first month that the people weren't getting their income taxes because, they had a warning that they weren't, and then they didn't get it, they screamed, and then after that, word got out, and we never heard another word about it, and that's how we got significant funds towards payment. But there is that that we don't get that goes to collection. So,
have other cities seen a decrease in calls after this kind of thing has been implemented?
I don't think so. I know Knoxville didn't. It kept getting higher and higher. So,
I assume no cost to sign up.
I haven't looked into how much it was.
Corey?
No, there's no cost.
Okay.
questions?
Okay. Last item that we have this evening, we want to make sure council's aware this month we will be contacting the townships and the entities that currently receive service from the Pella Community Ambulance. What we plan to inform them on this is that they will need a contract to continue to receive services, and that contract will need to be approved by the Pella City Council on that. So that's the first communication that will go out. The second communication that will go out is the cost that we incur to serve their entity or the governmental entity on it. And what we intend to do is simply inform them that there's real cost in providing services to outside our community. And what we plan to do is find out what in these cases, most of them are townships, what they're capable of financially contributing to this. Once we have that information, we plan to hold a work session with the City Council on this item. And ultimately, from at least from staff standpoint, this is a philosophical decision, but I'm just going to talk what our approach has been through the years for city services. For city services, we've always had the philosophy the citizens of Pella receive if there's any type of fees associated with it, there's always been a discount to the City of Pella. It's never been the case where the City of Pella provides a service and doesn't charge people outside its corporate limits for that service. And so if we did that for the ambulance, it would be different than what we've ever done before on the matter. What we plan to do is hold a work session, go over what they're capable of financially contributing, but ultimately the level of service that they're receiving from us has to match what their financial contribution is from at least from staff standpoint. And there's means that we intend to do it, but we wanted to make sure that you guys were aware, in case you're contacted, that we will be contacting them this month and opening those discussions. So.
Okay. Everybody understands that, I'm sure. All right.
Okay. And that's it.
Okay. All right, we'll move on to our third.
I just have one quick note. Just ambulance team, my parents needed your services today, so I know we're dealing with all the nitty-gritty, but just so grateful that you are in our community and taking care of people, and thank you, and thanks to the city for, like, you know, when it hits home, it hits home, so thanks, everybody. And everyone well.
Okay, last item on our planning session is the peddler permits within the Oskaloosa Street corridor.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. I'd be happy to explain this item. As Mayor DeWard stated, what this session is in regards to is peddler permits. Now, a little bit of background on this, rather. In May of this year, Council approved a temporary ordinance that waived design permits for the Oskaloosa Street corridor. That waiver will extend through December 31st of this year. Now, what we have is some bullet points, a little bit of background on the current code requirements for peddlers. It is important to note that for peddlers exceeding 30 days in a calendar year, they have to have a design permit from CDC on that, and I believe it is required to have a Dutch theme on your peddler. So the issue of food trucks, that could be an issue for a food truck or just a peddler in general, but those design requirements are usually, when we've dealt with peddlers, that's always been one of the topic of conversations is that design permit requirement, and that's what was waived for the Oskaloosa Street corridor. So Mandy, let's go ahead, please. Now, from June 1st through to date, we've had actually 2 peddlers have obtained permits to operate within the Oskaloosa Street corridor. We have the names of the peddlers up on the big board. Now, just in comparison, when we look at the corridor for 2021, there was 1 peddler permit for this roughly same time period on there. For 2017 through 2020, there were 0 in this corridor. So we went from 1 to 2, but before that it was 0 in the corridor. Now on this is meant to just be an open discussion with the key question was where do we go from here? When we approved the temporary ordinance, we talked about coming back and obtaining feedback and input from the entities on it. From city staff standpoint, Mandy, you deal a lot with peddlers, and I'm going to ask Jerry Bidos as well. Have we received any input from the public on the design change on the Oskaloosa Street corridor?
No, usually the feedback we would receive is negative, and we've not received any.
Okay. Now I want to ask Jerry Bidos from CDC's standpoint, has there been any feedback from CDC or anything that we've heard from planning and zoning on this issue?
Nothing from planning and zoning. The CDC, obviously, we're doing the design guidelines for the City of Pella in general, and we're currently up in the air on whether the Oskaloosa corridor is included in a special district for design criteria. So, that eventually will get ironed out of the CDC and come before council, so that might be something that you would want to wait to see that document first before this goes forward.
Okay. So with that, Mr. Mayor, I know that there's been council members that have asked about this, and so we're hoping just to have a discussion, and ultimately what we're looking for is what do we do for the next step? Should this waiver become permanent for the Oskaloosa Street corridor? Should it be something that we consider citywide on that as well? Or do we need more, do you need additional information to make an informed decision? So we're looking for direction, and we'll turn it over to the council to take it from here.
Okay, thank you, Mike. I'm interested to hear from our food truck operators. What's the response been?
I think the feedback is, why aren't you open more, and why are you just open in Oskaloosa Street? And that's, and then when you tell people why, they're like, well, that's really dumb. So, and I'll just say that that's what they say. That's probably not what they say, but that's what I'll tell you. And I guess from our perspective, or my perspective, I said it before in the last council meeting that we were here. I mean, I don't think that we're a peddler, so I'm, should food trucks be under a peddler permit, right? I mean, we are a small business. This is how we're trying to make an income for our family, but yet we're limited to what we can do. Knoxville, we paid for one permit for the whole year. We can go wherever we want to, and we don't even have to tell them where we're going. We can just go set up. So it's hard because you want to stay here, because you want to bring the food to the people here, because obviously they love it. We set up Saturday. It was a great day. He set up today. It was a terrific day. So it's just, if you could lift it and not have to have a Dutch front. Obviously, he's not Dutch. And it would be hard to put a Dutch front on it. I think it's silly to put a Dutch front on a barbecue food truck. I don't know, and I think times have changed probably since this permit was made, that food trucks probably weren't as nice as what they are now. So is it time to change it? I mean, that would be nice.
So how often are you in other communities?
It just depends on the events that are going on in some of those communities.
You do regular, like, I know you've been regularly here on Oskaloosa Street.
Monday he's usually in Oski.
Okay.
Tuesday here.
Okay.
Wednesday he's been going to Weiler in Knoxville. So.
I mean, there's places, I mean, I can go just about anywhere. As far as that corridor, it's great. Nothing wrong with it. The location is perfect. The biggest questions that I have been getting, as far as through emails or phone calls, is your corporations, Premier, PPI, Pella. Some of those guys are like, hey, why don't you come out here? And my thing is, I've pretty much threw the lateral over to Mandy and said, hey, these guys are calling me. I want to follow the rules. I want to keep everything straight and forward and make it known that I'm not going to be the previous food truck to come in, Premier through the back door, and then head back out of town without paying a permit. I'm going to be up front with you. But some of these corporations, these guys only have a half-hour lunch. So basically what I'm trying to do is provide a service. Not to say I want to go out and just make money, make all the money. I want to make sure it's easier for those guys to get an adequate, good lunch and not have to be late coming back from lunch or can't get lunch, period, So my thing is, I understand no one, I understand the whole thing with the square. I get that. To me, if it could be lifted across Pella and red light on the square, I understand that. That's off limits. Plants and such, Premier, yeah. So if not, the corridor is fine, over there, I'm good with that. I'm just trying to provide a service to make it, easier. And I do plan on opening more for the customer, because that's part of the feedback also is, why don't you open more? It's getting colder. The trailer was not built for the weather. I will turn it down a little bit, but I do plan on being in Pella a lot more for that reason. But it's just one of those things where other food vendors would like to come in. They ask me questions. How are you doing it? Pella's hard, this and that. And that's the one thing is, some of these food vendors, they feel alienated before they even get in here. And it's strictly because you want to do a background check. I understand that, you know, but at the same time, are you doing background checks for guys that are having brick and mortars? That's the one question I would like to know.
One of the things I'm hearing is, what if we could tie the lifting of those stiffer requirements to zoning, like industrial or institutional? Obviously, it protects the central business district, because our zoning map is kind of all over, but maybe those large ones would free him up to do, and anyone to do the big population collections during the day. Really doesn't impede the appearance idea, because they're industrial and institutional zonings anyway, which we all know are out of jurisdiction for these kind of fronts anyway. Those are good points. I think it's something seriously to consider, to release some of it. Still control that central, because you're right, obviously central is, I think you said red light.
Yeah.
Or even not just central, but just say if it's
Commercial.
Yeah, if it's strictly industrial or whatever. But
I think the thing that we have found is the need is there. They sell out every time.
Oh, yeah.
It's not a maybe, and it doesn't matter how much food they bring, it sells, and with the bakery trailer too, they always sell. So the need is there. It's when you look at the peddler permit process, it's outdated. It was written for the Fuller brush man who used to come in through town and knock on doors, and as industry is reaching out to Scott and to Heather, and industry is reaching out to us and saying, I really want them in our parking lot. I think we need to take a good look at this and move quickly on it, because I'm sure, Liz, it's a need. When I look and I see who Scott and Heather feed in that parking lot, it is incredible. It's all industry, all in Ward 1.
Oh, yeah.
And we have food insecurities there. We've got to get people in and out fast. And my understanding is there are a lot more trucks that want to come in. Tacos, we get asked about it all the time. It's our cumbersome process that's keeping this from benefiting everyone.
No, just a counterpoint. I think part of the heart behind the peddler permit is to protect somebody who's investing in brick and mortar.
Yes.
So we have to delicately balance those things. Because it's a big investment what you've done, but it's a big investment to lease for 5 years or whatever too. So I think we have to balance both those things. I don't disagree at all. Other than the food insecurity in Ward 1, might be a little bit of a strong term. I think one of our grocery stores
I
is
need
there.
to get to grab a quick bite
Yeah,
for lunch.
I don't
would say
disagree
the brick and mortar
that
would be
in
McDonald's.
the industries in town.
Pardon?
The brick and mortar would be McDonald's.
That's it.
That
Well,
yeah.
I'm thinking, uptown we've got, I know where the lunch places are, and I
I just
think
mean for
that
the 30-minute lunch
yeah.
break crew.
Yep.
That's
not
Yeah,
everybody can
'cause
have
it-
an hour and a half lunch. That's
Thank you.
The important part is to balance both interests, right? We want
For sure.
diversity, we want choices, we want new flavors, flavors, but we want to also support brick and mortar business too, because those are the ones that we know are there invested in all. I hope you are, but so I think that's just important to remember that some of the peddler stuff, I agree, is way too high a bar, but is there to try to protect those that invest for longer hauls, I guess. And it's only as good until somebody comes in that's maybe a disaster too.
Yeah.
You guys just happen to hit it out of the park.
Yeah.
Somebody comes in and is selling, who knows what else.
Yeah.
Why do you think that we're so much different than a brick and mortar?
Well, you can move your business wherever.
Right.
And the brick and mortar is saying, I'm here, and staking it.
Right.
And that's a
So-
different commitment level.
Right, but if we wanted to make that commitment level right now, we can't unless we pay for a permit every time we set up. Right?
Say that again for me. You could do
Is
that
that
now?
correct? I mean, we could, so like on private property, right? I mean, we could set up at my place at Deja Vu, but we have to pay for a permit every time we're there. Because we don't have a Dutch front. So like Friday night, he's setting up there for the wine walk. I have to, Mandy has done a permit for me, I haven't gone and picked it up, but I have to pay her $25 or $35 for that permit every time.
Are you still serving out of the truck or out of the business?
No, out of the truck.
I think that's probably the designation, but if you were asked to serve out of Deja Vu, I think you wouldn't have to do that, is my guess. I'm
No, you're right, we wouldn't. But what I'm saying is, I think sometimes, I understand people being a brick and mortar, right? Because obviously my store is a brick and mortar, and I'm committed here to be in Pella. I think we would be, and we would be more committed to stay in Pella more if we had that opportunity to go into other areas and have, to have a 6 months permit without having to put a Dutch front on it, is maybe what I'm saying.
Yeah.
And I think I don't think we're competition to any of the restaurants uptown during lunch hour. Because just like Liz and Lynn were saying, you have 30 minutes. Right now at McDonald's the other day, you go in there, they're not even have the inside open because they don't have any employees to serve the inside and the drive-through. So you can't even go through McDonald's probably within 30 minutes. So, I mean, I see the comparison between brick and mortar and a mobile because we can go everywhere. But if we truly wanted to be committed to Pella, we really can't be truly committed to Pella because of the rule that there is.
Yeah, so is there a way to tie a longer permit to a number of days they have to be here and open? So in other words, so some big outfit that has 20 trucks across the state doesn't buy a 6-month permit and never come here. They're busy doing anything or whatever.
Why do we care if they did?
Yeah, because they're still spending their
Well,
money.
to her point, if it's a hassle to get it, and then and there's a limited number or something, which I imagine we would do, that's competition that.
I'm not saying that it's a hassle to get it. I just think like he's parking on private property, right? Like it's private property at Deja Vu, but we still have to pay the city to be there. But I'm not using any of the city's facilities because it's private property. Am I wrong? Right? So, and I agree with Lynn. I think it's something that was meant for the vacuum salesman that was going door to door. And I'm not serving barbecue door to door, right? I'm doing a service for anybody who wants to come out and get it. So, and talking to other food trucks last Thursday when the hospital had that, I mean, all of those food trucks would love to come back to Pella. But their biggest thing is, I don't want to be fingerprinted and I don't want to have a background check.
And they're not trying to hide anything.
And not because they're hiding anything. They're just like, why do you have to know that? Because how do you know that a brick and mortar doesn't have somebody that has a felony or something? You're not background checking them, fingerprinting them. So in a way, I almost feel like we're being reprimanded for doing something that we wanted to do because we're not a brick and mortar. Right?
The fingerprints and all, I guarantee is related to wandering people through the neighborhoods, but I think
Yeah, back to the point that this is there are parts of this that are almost archaic in fashion,
Well, if I could say a couple things, I will say as far as the permit fees, we spend a lot of time, I'm talking in city administration, on peddler permits on it. So it's not necessarily something that I would say is a pure moneymaker for the city. There's a real cost administratively on this, as Mandy could attest. Two, I would say one group that we probably should get the input on, if we're going to lessen the requirements, is what's wrong with getting the input of the Peace Alliance on it. Because what we've always assumed through the years that if you make it easier for peddlers to come in here and do seasonal employment and compete with our permanent businesses that are here year-round paying property taxes, that could be a damaging thing on the overall economy on it, because our preference is to have people make investments in Pella, build buildings, pay property taxes, support the community on it. Now we realize you got the permit fee, but that's always been an assumption. So our recommendation would be is we assume that we're going to, not assume that the proposal is to lessen the requirements, is to get the input of the business community on that.
But we're looking at a completely different piece, and that's to Spencer's point and Liz's point too. I get the brick and mortar. I am a brick and mortar. You know, I get that. But what we're seeing is there's a need and there's an impediment to fill that need, and that impediment is on the part of the city. If we can loosen things, if we can make things more user-friendly, there are people that want to come into these certain regions and fulfill that need. And they're not going to compete with downtown. That's just kind of
Because
not
downtown,
even
they get more tourists. I'm not really worried about the tourists. I'm worried about everyone commercially, the factory workers, the guys that really want it, the need. I'm out for that. You know, hey, we got churches on every block. Everyone goes. Why can't we, you know, give, help them out? Come on.
Does the Schwan guy have to?
Yeah, does he have to have a permit?
Does he have a peddler?
It's bad.
No, he's not, because he's not selling, he's fulfilling orders. So if someone has requested the service,
He
he's
seems to come to my door and ask me to.
Lauren says foul on that.
Seeing all the kids
But
running around looking hungry and not.
I think one of the examples that when I heard this, it was, and if I'm speaking incorrectly, I want you to stop me. But the market in West Market Park during tulip time, all of those people do not go through a background check, right? Those vendors do not,
I can't speak to that just because of the organization of it. For special event permits as a whole, peddler permits are negated by that. So if there's a special event permit, like Thursdays in Pella is a good example. The special event promoter handles all of that through permission of that special event permit. So West Market Park and Tulip Time is the same type of
But
process.
also with that mandate, they're also giving us a certificate of insurance as an additional insurance as well. So they're assuming the liability for whoever sells and wears the goods.
I think we should explore what it looks like to have, if it overlays with a zoning district, or if it's simply we just explore, like, let's designate maybe even a district that isn't created currently for
For
that.
specific overlay that is for.
Yeah.
Food truck, XYZ, whatever's.
Yeah, and then because we're gonna talk about this
round and round
in circles to no end.
One thing I would ask though is, what I don't want to happen is we've looked at this for 6 months, and I know it sounds a little, I'm just a very proactive person. I'd like to come back and consider allowing that waiver to be placed after December 31st. I don't want to be looking at this and trying to get on the agenda in November.
I extend it.
Yes, please, yeah.
Just as it sits right now.
Yes, but put permit through March, April, May, don't know.
I'm assuming you have to take sales tax.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
So as far as the brick and mortar tax thing, you're not paying property taxes, but you are paying
Well,
sales
yeah.
tax.
We live here, we're paying property taxes.
But not everybody with a food truck comes to be paid property taxes.
No,
That's
I
what
understand that
that's what they need to-
they're still paying sales tax though too, but.
Well, no, the customer's paying it.
Well, a core issue here is we have an ordinance for an arcade enterprise, the door-to-door peddler, and we're trying to apply it to a modern phenomenon, the food truck. And it doesn't work.
No.
We
I
ought
didn't hear
to-
anything.
we
I didn't
ought to
hear
start
you
all
say
over
that.
fresh
That's why we
when
should
we're talking about food truck.
I didn't
What
hear
do you
you
say?
say.
We were in Portland, Oregon a few weeks
Go
ago.
up to your
We
mic.
can't hear you.
Oh, excuse me.
It's very profound. We want to hear it.
We were in Portland, Oregon a few weeks ago, and there they do their food trucks and pods. We walked about 4 blocks down the street to I suppose it was a vacant lot prior to the food trucks, and there were about a dozen food trucks there. Some common picnic tables, kind of like was over here on the old Happy Joe's parking lot at Tulip Time. You know, there were about 6, 8 vendor stalls right there in that location, and then a whole bunch of picnic tables had been set up, and it made a lot of sense.
Yeah, yeah. There are a lot of surrounding communities that are, quite frankly, trying to woo our food trucks away from Pella and making some pretty sweet offers to Scott and Heather. And I would hate for us to lose good people. They can go visit, but I always want Scott and Heather to come back home. And bring their friends, the taco truck.
And I think what else you have to think about, if you're worried about them not spending money in Pella, if you bring them here, they're probably going to go somewhere here and spend money, right? Like even if I have somebody come into my store, where's a good place to go and eat lunch? Well, if it's Tuesday, of course I'm going to tell them to go eat at Scott's truck, right? But if it's any other day, you mention all of the restaurants of town. So it's not like we're not trying to spread the love. I understand brick and mortars are bringing money into the city, but I think that's our goal also, is to bring money here, right? I mean, so, I don't know, I think it's just saddening, once again, I will say, because we're not a brick and mortar, it's almost like we're being reprimanded because we're not.
Right, but I like the diversity of options that you're bringing.
Yeah, exactly, yeah. And do we want to be tied to a restaurant that you have to be open 7 days a week? No. Would we get help? No.
Yeah.
Right? So we wouldn't survive.
Well, and I think to the enhancement, and Liz can speak to this, to our laborers here, to make their lives more enjoyable, which we're trying to do too, having those on the factory facilities really makes a lot of sense to me. I mean, the most, right, actually.
I agree. And I think more than getting the piece that information that I would really like to have more so than PACE, because they're going to concentrate on brick and mortar, and this is completely different, is I would love our industry's feedback on how would this benefit your business? You know, would you use it? Is it a need? That if you can get some of that back to us.
How fast do you want it?
Pardon me?
How fast do you want it? Because I've got a book. I mean, I can get you. Everyone can email you and say, yeah, we want it.
Yeah, and I'm happy to switch hats for a second and say, Ramir would love to be able to host that. There's been email chains already, and how do we do that? We have some that were willing to come for second and third shift. Like, we literally would love to be able to offer something like this to our team members. So that's
Okay, so
on a pragmatic spot though, does the industry know where they want them? Traffic flow, does the police department know where they want them for traffic flow? There's people walking across Oski to get to whatever, I don't know. There might be some safety considerations at minimum, but I don't see why we can't go ahead and look into an overlay specifically to this item or by zoning.
So someone mentioned earlier that this, as it's turned into what you mentioned, it's like a dog chasing its tail here. So we have to give some direction to our staff as to where we want to go. What I'm hearing from most of you is that we need to explore the archaic, as it's been described, peddler permit. And I think the suggestion maybe was to think about it as a start to maybe the way some areas are zoned. So that might be a good place to start, and we could maybe get a map that would show industrial zoning where that would fall for everything. That seems to be the biggest need right now. So I think that would be wise to head in that direction. And the extension on Oskaloosa Street for next year should be an easy, I think we should just do that. Because, as I said earlier, government never moves very fast, so we can do that quickly. We can figure the rest out over the next few months. Does that make sense?
It makes
a year.
A lot of sense.
I just have one problem with the food truck there. When he
They
started,
have one problem with you too.
when he started, I used to get a few leftovers.
That is a true fact. That is true.
Okay, so,
That is true.
all right. So the only thing left on our agenda is a closed session, so unless somebody wants to sit here while we go have a closed session, I don't think there'll be any action. Where I'm gonna kick you all out of here and we'll have our closed session here, so. Thank you all for your input.
Motion come out of our closed session, so I will entertain a motion to adjourn. So moved. Support. Banstra, Hopkins. All in favor, please say yes. Opposed, no. Mandy, please call the roll.
Banstra.
Yes.
Hopkins. Sporer.
Yes.
DeYoung.
Yes.
Branderhorst. Carlstone.
We are adjourned.